In a house where silence was never broken, a whisper began to call his name. No one had entered that room for years. But tonight, something inside wanted to be heard. When he opened the door, the air turned cold, the mirror began to move. And the reflection staring back at him was not his own. The night was heavy. Air stood still as if time refused to breathe. A faint sound echoed through the narrow wooden corridor. It was neither loud nor soft, just a whisper. A whisper that did not belong. Aaron froze near the old door. He felt the cold seep through the gaps of the wood. His heart beat slow, then faster, then slower again. The oil lamp beside him flickered. The flame trembled as if afraid. He took a step forward. The floor creaked under his bare feet. The sound stretched into the silence. It felt alive, as if the house itself listened. The whisper came again, this time clearer. It said his name, Aaron. He looked around quickly. No one stood near him. Only the faint moonlight spilled through the broken window. Dust floated like ghostly ashes in the pale light. The sound came from the room ahead. That room had been locked for years. His grandmother used to say it must never be opened. He always thought it was a story to scare him. But now, something called him from inside. He reached for the rusted handle. It felt damp and cold under his touch. The wood trembled slightly, as if something moved within. He swallowed the dryness in his throat. His fingers pushed the door open. A sharp smell of old flowers and burnt incense filled the air. The room was dark, except for a faint glow near the corner. There stood a small mirror, covered in dust. He walked toward it slowly, each step heavier than the last. The whisper grew louder. It was no longer one voice. It sounded like many, merging into one strange echo. The air turned thick. Aaron felt his skin prickle with unease. He looked into the mirror. His reflection stared back, but something was wrong. The eyes were his, yet not his. They blinked before he did. They smiled when he did not. A sudden gust of cold air swept through the room. The lamp outside the door went out. Darkness wrapped around him like water closing over a drowning man. He heard the whisper again, right behind his ear. It spoke softly. Welcome back. He turned sharply, but no one was there. Only the faint shimmer of the mirror behind him. And in that mirror, his reflection stayed smiling. Even though his own lips never moved. Aaron stepped backward, eyes locked on the mirror. The reflection began to move closer, slowly, silently. Its head tilted to one side. And then, it whispered again, a sound that felt alive, crawling beneath his skin. Aaron's breath turned shallow. The air grew heavier, pressing against his chest. The reflection in the mirror leaned closer, even though he had not moved. Its eyes glowed faintly, like the last embers of dying fire. For a moment, he thought it was only a trick of light. But then it smiled wider. That smile stretched unnaturally. Too wide, too still. The corners of its lips reached further than human skin should allow. Aaron stumbled backward, his heel hitting the edge of an old chest. The sound broke through the silence like a scream. The mirror trembled. The glass rippled like disturbed water. The reflection raised its hand, slow, deliberate, graceful, and pressed it against the inside of the glass. A faint sound followed, like the gentle scratching of fingernails. Then another hand appeared. Then the surface began to bend outward, as if something beneath was pushing through. Aaron's mind told him to run. His legs refused. Every muscle felt locked, frozen in the weight of terror. He could smell something strange, not the old incense anymore, but something raw, a faint scent of iron. It filled the back of his throat. The mirror cracked. A fine line ran across the surface, followed by another. Light seeped from the fractures, pale and cold. The sound of whispering filled the room, hundreds of voices blending, weaving together into a single tone. Aaron covered his ears. The voices did not stop. They were inside his head now. He saw movement. A pale arm slid out of the mirror, dripping with a mist that curled like smoke. The fingers touched the ground, long, slender, and cold. Then came the rest of the form, pulling itself free, bending in strange angles. It was his reflection, yet not him. Its eyes were empty, its mouth moved soundlessly. Still, he heard the whisper. Aaron, come back. He staggered backward, hitting the wall. The reflection moved closer. Its feet made no sound on the wooden floor. Every step it took made the shadows stretch and bend. The lamp outside the room flickered again. The door behind him shut on its own. He reached for it, hands trembling, but it would not open. His fingers slipped on the wood, slick with sweat. The whisper drew nearer, right next to him. He could feel the chill of its breath on his neck. When he turned, it stood inches away, smiling that impossible smile. Its voice was soft, almost kind. Do you remember what you left here? Aaron shook his head, unable to speak. He had never been here before. At least, that was what he believed. The creature tilted its head. Its eyes dimmed, like fading light in a storm. You were not supposed to forget. Its tone turned sad, almost mournful. Then it reached out and touched his forehead. Images flooded his mind. A child crying in the same room. A hand covering his mouth. A mirror shattering. And a small figure, lifeless, lying on the floor, a boy who looked exactly like him. Aaron gasped, falling to his knees. His breath came in short bursts. He remembered now, a twin. A brother. He had locked this room because of that night. Because of what happened when they both looked into the mirror and wished to trade places. The reflection leaned close again. Its eyes no longer empty but filled with sorrow. You promised me you would come back. The voice was soft but carried through every corner of the room. You walked away, Aaron. You lived. I stayed. The mirror behind it pulsed with light, glowing brighter. The surface opened like liquid silver. Inside, shapes moved, faint outlines of faces, whispers of forgotten moments. Aaron crawled backward, but the wall stopped him. There was nowhere to go. The reflection stretched out its hand once more. Let me out completely, it said. Or take my place. Aaron shook his head, eyes wide with fear. He wanted to scream, but no sound left his mouth. The whispers grew louder, echoing his heartbeat. He felt something pulling him forward, a pressure, like invisible hands gripping his shoulders. The floor beneath him vibrated. Dust fell from the ceiling. He looked at the mirror again. For a split second, he saw his own reflection, the real one. It looked terrified. Then it began to fade, replaced by the other face, calm and smiling. No, Aaron whispered under his breath. But the force pulled stronger now. His hands reached out against his will. The reflection mirrored him perfectly. Their fingers touched at the surface of the glass. Cold spread through his skin like frost. The glass melted under their touch. The two images merged. He felt his strength draining away, pulled through his fingertips. His voice broke free finally, a scream lost in the echo of hundreds more. Then, silence. The light vanished. The mirror stood still once again. No cracks. No movement. Only one reflection, standing quietly. It smiled faintly. Then it turned away from the mirror. Stepping out of the room. Its footsteps were steady, calm. Outside, the night had grown even quieter. The air no longer carried morning came slowly. The first light of dawn slipped through the cracks of the old shutters, spreading across the silent floor. Dust drifted lazily in the beam, dancing in the calm that followed the storm. The house stood still, too still, as if it held its breath after a long night of secrets. Aaron stepped outside. The world looked the same, yet something had changed. The air smelled cleaner, but colder. The birds sang, but their notes seemed distant, hollow. He blinked against the sunlight, feeling it warm his skin, though inside, a strange emptiness settled where his heart used to race. He walked down the small dirt path behind the house. Children ran past, chasing each other, laughing. They waved at him. He smiled back. But his smile did not quite reach his eyes. One of the older villagers stopped and looked at him closely. Aaron, she said softly, you look different. He only nodded. His voice came out gentle, steady. I slept well for the first time in years. That night, he sat by the mirror again. It now hung perfectly clean, its surface flawless. When he looked into it, he saw only himself. No second face. No whisper. No shadow moving behind the glass. Still, sometimes, just at the edge of sound, he heard something faint. A soft echo, barely there. A single word that brushed his ear before vanishing. Remember. He would turn. Nothing. Only silence. Days turned into weeks. Aaron grew quieter, more distant. He started spending hours near the forest at dusk, standing still as if waiting for something. The villagers began to whisper, saying the old curse had woken again. But he never spoke of that night. He never mentioned the mirror. One evening, as the sun sank and the world turned gold, Aaron walked to the edge of the field. He looked toward the horizon where the sky met the earth. A faint wind brushed his hair. For the first time in years, he whispered a name, the name of his lost brother. Then he smiled, a small, peaceful smile. The same smile that once lived only inside the mirror. And when the villagers passed by the next morning, the house was empty. The door stood open. Inside, the mirror lay shattered on the floor, shards glinting in the sunlight like tiny pieces of frozen water. Among them was a faint reflection, two faces, side by side, fading slowly until only the glass remained. The whisper was gone. The silence stayed. And in that silence, the story of the mirror ended, quietly, almost tenderly, as if the house itself finally exhaled.